This is a Film Stories original podcast. Welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. I'm your host today, Russ Hugo, and welcome back to the I Want to Believe Minute, where we unpick the second X-Files movie 1 minute at a time. Today, helping me to explore minute 59, which is running from approximately 58 minutes, and then up to 58-59, and this is going to be about a vision, if I ever had one, where Scully visits Father Joe, is a returning Xcast guest. And we're very excited and privileged to have join us again as our famous author friend, Jim Beard. Welcome back, Jim.
Hey, it's good to be back. I don't know, it's been so long, maybe I'm new all over again.
There you go. Well, speaking of, if I believe here, actually, before we get to that, before we start, just a quick reminder to follow the Xcast on social media at Linktree. That's linktr.ee/thexcast. And if you're enjoying the show, please do give us a quick 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And of course, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/thexcast for future early releases of episodes, bonus content, and lots of other friendly, fun things. But speaking of Jim being new back to the Xcast, this gets to the fun story of when did you first see I Want to Believe?
Yesterday.
And there you go.
How's that for fresh?
Yes, we're very fortunate, as Jim did watch a lot of the original X-Files show, first few seasons when it was on, as we've talked about, was he's been a guest on the previous few seasons. But this is an especially fun take we're going to get, I hope, from you, Jim. And so with that, I'd love to get your general thoughts on the movie and a rating out of 10.
So generally, I would call this a fairly tepid thriller with some X-Files window dressing. I didn't dislike it and I didn't love it. I kind of fell in the middle on this one. It was, in some ways, it was fascinating to watch, never having seen it before, and kind of forgetting where things were at with X-Files when this movie came out. And kind of trying to get caught up on things as this was going on, and didn't really realize that when I was watching it that the show had already ended by this point. So that was really interesting. What Russ, really the biggest thing that I came away with is it seemed like Chris Carter and the crew were going out of their way to try to make this as much unlike the first movie as possible. I once heard this described as more like a Monster of the Week episode of the X-Files, but I didn't even really kind of see it like that. I saw it more as literally just like a serial killer, thriller type of thing. It's done really well. It's filmed well. And everybody in it is pretty good. It's just funny. It doesn't really stand out in any other way. Here's one funny thing that I also came away with. It reinforced my belief that Gillian Anderson is a better actor than David Duchovny.
Yeah, on that point, I think that depends on what common refrain on the Xcast is. And I think there's something to it, is that Duchovny, his performance depends on the script itself. And there are certain styles of storytelling of which he excels, but that Anderson generally brings her A game to every script. And, I'm sure you could make a case that she's also a better overall actor if you wanted to.
Just say, she's a better overall actor, and he's not bad in it. The funny thing is I liked him better with the beard. And when
I
he
think I
when he
agree with
shaves it
you.
off, he looks too
Yeah.
weird for some reason to me. I actually liked him better, with the scratchy beard, as she says in the movie. But but again, I don't. I mean, I don't. It's an X-Files story in terms of it puts forth the different positions of Mulder and Scully, but otherwise, I guess I was thinking that it was going to have more of what, I don't know, the supernatural or whatever. I mean, we're really kind of left with not really knowing if there was any supernatural, stuff going on in this. I guess it was an interesting avenue to go down, but again, I really felt like they were like doing everything in their power to not be like the first movie at all, which I did see. I actually saw the first movie in the theater.
I don't know all of the details by heart, but my understanding is that they were hoping for this to be the start of multiple films, and everything kept getting delayed by the studio, and then budgets were getting reduced. And then when this time to make this film came about, they had an extremely short turnaround time. So they realized if you don't have a big budget, you can't do a big action-packed mythology storyline. Let's do it a little bit more structured. And the Monster of the Week analogy isn't so much, I think, the sense of the episodes where there is an actual monster, but some of the more standalone episodes. This would harken back to something like Oubliette, Unruhe, Paper Hearts, Closure, or even back to season 1 with Beyond the Sea. Most seasons have one or two style of a serial killer with a little bit of a psychic or, time-based element. And then also, I think they're trying to reorient the storyline to focus on where Scully is at now. Of course, Mulder also, but the idea that things had advanced so much since the first movie of her relationship to the supernatural, and instead, like, her position and where she's at in her life in relation to the FBI, and the fact that she's kind of become more like Mulder, but being in the real world. They're playing with that. So it is a little bit more dry, but considering the time constraints and the rest, there's stuff to admire and there's stuff to criticize. It's totally fair. So what would you think you would rate it out of 10?
Oh, okay. This is fairly easy for me. I would say I'll give it a 6. Falling somewhere in the middle, but a little bit more to the positive. Again, it's shot well. I think it's written well and acted fairly well. There's some characters that kind of get lost in here. They're introduced and then nothing really comes of them. Specifically the FBI agents that they have to work with. But again, I mean, overall, it's still a quality movie. It's just nothing really to get terribly excited about.
It's great to have your fresh take on things, and I'd love to now dig into some more details, and I'm sure we'll get some other observations. Looking forward to see what your thoughts are. Our minute here starts off in Manners Colonial Hospital, and I'm assuming that's going to be a reference to Kim Manners, the X-Files director. Just a hunch. And we have some surgeons there talking about having a little story about a potential plane crash, and that the last minute saved, and how romantic that is as they're waiting for the courier here to pick up the organs. My main thought here is that the operating room is excessively dark even for an X-Files operating room. I think it's this movie has quite a few dim and dark and grungy operating rooms. In the other hospital, it makes a little more sense, being that it's gothic and it's this Catholic aesthetic. But here, it seemed a bit much. And the courier, the main actor there, we'll be talking about this in quite a few of the minutes we're talking about today, but the Russian accent to me, and just the Russianness, the Russophobic coding, is a little over the top. Bothers me a little bit, but otherwise, what are your general thoughts about this minute as you're easing into the structure?
I remember when the scene began that I actually had this weird moment of confusion that I wasn't sure where it was taking place, or as far as we've been getting the like organ farm scenes, the illicit one, and I almost thought for a moment that the the ladies and taking the organ out of the body, and them literally just, it was, this mundane prattle that they're going through. I almost thought that was the illicit place at first, and then I quickly realized, no, this is unfortunately this is the legitimate place. I thought that was kind of a statement as far as people will go on about mundane things or just they're wrapped up in their own selves, and they can even be doing something extreme like cutting up a body to take the organs out and then put them into a container for a courier to take. I was also a little surprised when the agents then confront the Russian man, that I thought that it seemed odd that it was coming earlier in the film than I thought, because I'm like, I wasn't sure how that was going to play out. Like, well, I thought, okay, well, the jig is up, unless he bolts, unless he, runs off. And of course they don't get him, spoiler alert. But that was really my takeaways from this those scenes.
And one of the agents who comes, the Robert Cole with the district attorney's office, is there with another officer, and they encounter him as he comes out of the courier, as he comes out of the elevator. And I couldn't find anything about the actor playing Robert Cole. There's no credits listed on IMDb. I skipped to the end of the film, and I didn't see a credited role for that. It probably is in there, but the way the credits are structured in film, skipping around, I might have just missed that screen. But I thought he did a good job. I liked the actor who played Robert Cole. It is an interesting beat, like you said, of like assuming where you expect then the plot to go and the interaction with the character from that point.
I kind of agree with you about kind of how broadly sketched the Russian is. It was funny. I was thinking like, oh, isn't it always good to know that you can always we can always count on Russians as the bad guys in in movies and TVs. But other than that, I thought that the actor was kind of good. I did like the way he handled that scene. I especially like it when he asks if he's under suspicion, and they don't answer him. I'm trying to remember then what the agent says at that point, but I thought that scene was handled well. It was nice to not really know what was going to happen, because here's me saying like, wow, this is really kind of coming early. Like, you would think that this would be a scene later in the movie when they finally catch up with him, and again, not knowing where that's going. And I also felt that he portrayed some good agitation as far as like, I have this organ and I need to go because there's a time limit kind of a thing going on here. And I thought, that was probably like a really good excuse to try to get away from these agents who at that point are, pretty much probably thinking the jig is up with this guy.
All that's fair. I wish that the actor would have portrayed it a little bit less suspicious, and that he's so hostile that it would have made, I think, for a more compelling drama to have somebody who's remotely charismatic, because so much of that character is already so broadly sketched with the teeth. Then the fact that he spits out some of his words when they ask, so have you ever illegally procured an organ? Says, no. How would your employer answer this question? He's sick, has cancer. Am I under some kind of suspicion? And he says that in, as my notes say, in the most suspicious way possible, which it's fine. I mean, it's a thriller, but compared to some of the other minutes I've talked about, that subplot, everybody else acts, I think, fairly consistently and well balanced, but the arc dealing with the organ trafficking is being a little bit too cartoonish in the performances, that it hurts the balance of the film for me, that it's trying to balance all of these multiple threads of problematic things, problematic people, and challenges, and it's an internally debating film, but some of the way that it's stacking the deck, it just makes it less interesting because it is so over the top for me.
That's all fair too. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to talk about before we move on to the next minute?
No, I'm good with it, because I'm really much more excited and interested in talking about what's coming up.
with that, then, we'll be back to cover minute 60 very soon. But until then, as always, please remember, trust no one.